Hey, Ogle, can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Hey, Bell.
Hi, everyone. Where in the world are you guys today?
I am still in Georgia, the country, not the state. And I actually set up the Twitter thing properly, so I'm joining as Snapshot instead of joining as Glue. So look at me.
Yay!
Well done.
Low bar exceeded.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, I am once again in an undisclosed location. Bell, thanks for asking.
In North America?
In North America, yeah, I'm making my way to Texas for the thing next week, the consensus.
Is it undisclosed because it's so lame you don't want to admit it?
Sure. Yeah. Compared to where you go, I think I've literally never been anywhere cool. So.
All right, Bell, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, let's start. Well, today we have a few questions from the community. Once we finish with them, we will open the floor, so anyone that wants to ask a question can do so. The first one is, we will use multi-sig wallets. Can you explain how this feature enhances security for users?
Yeah, totally. So let me start from a product perspective. So I want to make it clear, the multi-sig is natively built into the layer 1 and layer 2s. So this is not just something for wallets, and wallets will actually have to support it first before it will work on the wallet side. But the whole idea is that the multi-signature approach, like for example, you can set up a Gnosis safe on Ethereum right now and effectively get a multi-sig wallet. The problem with that ends up being, though, it's just so much more complex. It needs to get set up as a smart contract, which then makes a whole bunch of other things quite a bit more complex. And it's just a lot less flexible. And so on Glue, you can do that natively on the layer 1 and the layer 2s. And what that in turn enables is more stuff like multi-sig wallets, but also a ton of other use cases. So I just want to differentiate that the multi-sig isn't just on the wallet side, right? Because there is ring signatures, like there's all kinds of ways to make a wallet multi-sig, and they already exist, where we have it natively built in, which I think will be a lot more powerful. And multi-sig wallets will certainly be probably the major use case of that, but it also benefits in a whole bunch of other ways. And I'll let Ogle jump into the details as to why it's pretty cool.
I think that itself is pretty cool. But one neat thing I think that you can build is some of the stuff you can build around this. Like that's actually what I'm most excited about. So if you have a native multi-sig situation, then if I'm a third party and I want to build a business on the service layer of Glue, then I have the opportunity to do so. So one example of that would be, let's say that I'm a company that does security stuff, and I want to be that other multi-sig for you, so I approve your transactions. Now, let's say that, Bell, you typically spend $1,000 a day, and you only deal with 4 different major contracts, right? So maybe it's like Balancer and Pancake Swap and Uniswap and whatever else you like. Then I, as a third party, multi-sig partner on the service layer, could theoretically say, tell you what, if you ever go outside of working with these 4 contracts, or if you ever spend more than say $5,000, whatever the parameter is you decide, then I'm going to send you a text message and make sure it was really you, right? So that way, if someone gets your wallet, if someone gets the keys to your wallet, for example, which happens a lot of times, and they go and try and dump all of your tokens into DAI or whatever, and then try to send them across the bridge and so forth, it wouldn't happen because they wouldn't get the other multi-sig signature, so the transaction couldn't go through, and you wouldn't be rugged. You would get the text message, you would say, oh shoot, this isn't good. Okay, fine. So then you would go and get your money out using one of your backup signatures in that case. And so that's one example I think that's super fun. I know for a lot of people who get rugged, it's very clear that what they're doing on their wallet is not what they're meaning to do on their wallet. Like very few people go from not really touching their wallet for a year, and then suddenly in 3 transactions removing every piece of money from it, going to another wallet that they've never interacted with before. It just doesn't happen very much legitimately, but it happens a lot with bad guys. And so this is one implementation of it that I think would be kind of fascinating to see someone come in on the service layer and build against. If they don't build against it, frankly, I probably will, because I like it a lot as a business and would love to be able to build that on Glue.
Yeah, and so to add another non-wallet use case, right? So another thing you could, for example, do if you had like a financial advisor, right? And you say, hey, look, I want you to invest on my behalf, but I don't really just want to give you all my money. What you could do is you could set up the same multi-sig, right? It's 2 out of 4. You give that person one key, and then whenever they submit a transaction, you have to approve it. And so you could effectively be the checks and balances for that situation where they submit the trades, right? They submit if you want to pay someone, right? So it's not just a wallet thing. Multisig enables tons and tons of use cases where you would want to share an address with someone, right? Either share
Yeah.
custody or more of a like no, like for example, even like for a treasury type thing, right? It'd be way nicer to have native multisig than to have to set up a Gnosis safe. But it's a great product, right? But it's just much more limited, right? It's just not near as flexible as what the native implementation will allow. And so, yeah, it is a lot broader, and it's kind of hard to say what people will do with it because there's a ton of cool ways to use it. But it's not just a wallet thing, right? It's going to really have lots and lots of broad applications.
Well, actually, Snapshot, I've got a good example of something. So I talked about the multi-sig to some traditional finance people probably about half a year ago. Whenever I was having dinner with them, these are guys from like the the Goldman kind of side of the world, and they said, oh, well, this would let us actually, if we could plug into that, and especially if there was like a way for them to automatically approve or disapprove, similar to the thing I was talking about a moment ago. Like if it falls inside certain parameters, they can approve it, otherwise they don't. He said, oh, this is great because this would allow us to basically give an allocation of money to our traders, like to our actual traders at big traditional finance company. And we can say, hey, look, you've got 100,000 USDC. You can go and do whatever you think is the wise thing because you're investing on our behalf, right? That's what you're doing. But this would allow the bank to stop certain things from happening, to stop certain contracts from being dealt with, to stop that trader from stealing the money, for example, or any other number of issues. So he was thinking this was really great for them because now they could, as a traditional bank that does investments and buying and selling trading, this would enable them potentially to be able to set up a system where their traders could now be inside the crypto space.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, right? Where like traditional institutions have fiduciary responsibilities, right? They're legally required to make good financial decisions. So in a lot of cases, they cannot just say, hey, you're the trader of this account, right? We will just give you unlimited, unconditional access and you could just steal it, right? Like even if they wanted to take that risk, they're probably not going to be legally allowed to actually take that risk. And so what they could do on Glue is to say, hey, here's this address, right? But our system, or like their own system, would countersign as the second out of 2 SIGs, right? And it would just say, hey, look, you can only trade on whatever these 6 protocols are, and you cannot do transfers, and you cannot buy shitcoins, right? And I think this will open up a huge whole industry basically because like it's so hard. Like there's prop funds, right? And prop funds are a little different, but anyone who has a fiduciary responsibility is going to have a really hard time trading crypto on chain because there's just not enough checks and balances. And you have products like Fireblocks that do an amazing job kind of getting around the inherent limitations that ETH has on multisig, right? But they have to get around it where we just kind of natively have it. So while it's possible to resolve and it's certainly doable, this will bring like Fireblocks costs a lot of money, right? And so this will bring that natively even to retail users because it's not usually feasible for a retail user to have a Fireblocks account. Or it's just way too expensive. And so this will resolve a lot of that. So I'm pretty excited. And again, the funny thing is it wasn't super difficult to implement. It's not cryptographic. It's pretty simple, right? I mean, Gnosis Safe does it. It's not like a rocket science thing. It just feels like no one's really done it because I think a lot of people in crypto are waiting for account abstraction, which is also great, right? But everyone's kind of just waiting for that instead of having gone with the relatively simple multi-sig implementation. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to have done this. It was not super difficult. It's gonna be a big part of the audit because it's obviously very sensitive. But yeah, that's kind of that. I think Bell that probably answered most of this, potentially more in depth than the question actually wanted, I guess.
Yes, thanks. The level of customization from new users to advanced seems like it'll be, wow, night and day. Thank you so much, both of you. Next question I have is, Glue will have service providers. Can you please give some examples and explain how they can improve the end user's experience?
Yeah, okay. So I'll start at the beginning with this one. So so when people choose a bank, right, it's just a TradFi bank, at least I do, the first thing I'm going to look at is the quality of the service, right? Because realistically, banks are all going to be roughly the same, and the fees are going to be all roughly the same. So the thing I care about, like for example, I used to bank with First Republic, and they were amazing because I could call them and they didn't put me on hold. They would send me cookies, right? I'm like, this is excellent. This is the type of bank I'm looking for. Crypto has completely ignored that entire aspect of, I get maybe banking is the wrong word, but finance and just like interacting with customers in general, right? Crypto is basically taking this road of like, no, there's no services. And if you cannot just figure it out yourself, you're shit out of luck and we really don't want you, right? And so I think at the core, that's going to be such a challenge for adoption. I think that's why nearly just the vast majority of users sticks to centralized exchanges. And most decentralized exchanges don't have great service, right? But they have some service. And so I really think bringing service to blockchain is going to be crucial. And so we are not going to be providing services ourselves. So the Glue blockchain will not provide services. I think that's not the idea. But we want to build an ecosystem of service providers, right? Like if you're in crypto, you probably get calls from your friends and family, and it's always just like, oh, I lost all my tokens. Can you help me find them? Right. And usually the answer is really simple. Mediumly trained call center agent could easily answer it. Right. So those type of use cases where that's easily solvable. You just need to be able to talk to someone. They will then help you find it. And so the core there is there needs to be a revenue model, right? Because you cannot really do it on Ethereum because, well, how would you pay for it? Now, could you set up a smart contract with a monthly fee or something like that? It's like you could, but the problem is there's really there's no real incentives for people to do that, right? Where on Glue, what we'll have is that the fee sharing mechanism is going to be built into the actual layer 1 and layer 2. So the idea being is you can say, hey, I want to opt into customer service from company X, and I will pay them 5 cents for every transaction I make. That way, in exchange, they provide me with customer service, right? For credit cards, I think they take about 3% in fees. That gets split through various service providers. It's just kind of bundled together. And so this idea that there needs to be a revenue opportunity that's easy, that's scalable, and that's recurring, that I think to me is how we will be able to recruit a lot of really good service providers. And I think those service providers, you will have full choice, right? You can say, hey, this customer support company didn't work as well as I thought. I'm going to switch to this one, right? Because it's on chain, super easy to cancel, super easy to switch. And it's going to be more like App Store-like, I'd say, where the goal is to have choice, right? Maybe there's a super high-end service provider who charges a lot, and then there's a super inexpensive one, but they have whatever, a great AI assistant that helps you, right? And there's going to be a whole spectrum. It applies to insurance, to premium wallets. I mean, there's innumerable use cases, but I think at the core is the concept that people like good service. For even the most basic things, right? Like if you go to a hotel, you expect good service. And just this idea that services don't exist in crypto, I think is going to be just a huge handicap long-term for everyone else. And I think a massive advantage for us if we can really build a solid base of service providers.
Yeah, so a couple other like quick examples that I'll give, Vel, of things that I thought about that might be interesting service layers, whenever you take a little bit of each transaction and kind of throw it to someone else. One is particularly frustrating to deal with every year, and that's taxes. And so if you could have, for every transaction that you do on the chain, let's say you have a tax partner, cryptotax.com or whatever, and they say, look, if you connect us in there, we're your service layer. We'll take 5 cents on every transaction you do, and we're going to record that in our system. We're going to track it. And at the end of the year, you don't pay us anything. That you've already paid for it. So it's basically a consumption payment in that case. So if you do 1,000 transactions, you just paid whatever the fee is times 1,000. If you do 10,000, it's whatever the fee is times 10,000, which is how it is anyway, by the way, now. But you end up having to do loads and loads of work to keep up with and find those transactions, and the accounting software almost always sucks. Whereas if you could do this simultaneously, I think that you can have a better service. Another thing I
That's
thought
a really
about
cool
is,
idea, actually, because they could
thank
literally,
you.
they would listen into your addresses. You could have multiple addresses opted in. You would tell them on their side, hey, these are the ones
Yep,
that are connected. And they would, at the end of the year, send you tax statements because they would just actually
they know.
watch this and aggregate it. They know it's all public. It's easy to figure out. They know your tax basis, all that stuff, because you bought it.
Yep.
That's super cool. I like that a
And I think
lot.
that solves a massive problem in crypto right now, which is trying to get backward database information. So whenever you do your taxes, they have to go back and they have to basically keep a massive database of what the prices were at certain times, et cetera. They have to cross compare that to when your transaction occurred. They have to figure out, like if it's two different tokens you're trading between, like which one those are. It's a massive headache, and that's why there's really not any company that's done a good job with it, frankly. And so
Yeah.
This is an idea I had last night. I was like, if they did it in real time, then it's done. 5 cents,
Yeah,
boom,
the
there's a
big
database
difference
entry.
is,
So
yeah, it's the revenue model, right? Because suddenly
exactly.
you have a recurring revenue business that's going to be valued really highly by VCs, et cetera, versus, oh, you're a tax company that like goes and does grunt work every year to figure out Ogle's taxes, right? Like, no.
Exactly.
You get a basically kind of like a W-2-esque thing at the end of the year saying like, hey, here's all the things you did. Here's your gain. Here's your losses. These offset. You tell them the jurisdiction. So they do it by jurisdiction. I really love that idea. I think that's super cool. And yeah, it only works
Thank
because you
you.
have a way to pay them, right? Because if they
Exactly.
every year have to sell you again, it's going to be a nightmare. It's never going to actually work. And the customer acquisition cost is going to be so massive. But if you
Yeah.
can, and that's the nice thing, if in the Gluehub, there's like a little thing that says, hey, would you like to sign up for this full tax service? Costs a cent a transaction. It's real cheap. And we'll send you a W-2 at the end of the year. I bet you just the absolute vast majority of users would opt into that because it's inexpensive and it's going to solve a massive problem. And suddenly those
Yeah.
companies will make huge amounts of recurring revenue for a piece of software. So it's like guaranteed
It can
SaaS
turn into a
revenue.
big business. I mean, it's a big business
Yeah.
right there if someone can do it right. So that's just an idea I had yesterday, kind of randomly, because I was thinking through how irritating it is to do taxes every quarter. And then the other quick idea I'll throw out there before we move on is, and this isn't quite as sexy, I guess, but a lot of people, like a lot of people who get a paycheck. Let's say you work a job, you get a paycheck, whatever. You put aside, for a lot of people in the U.S. anyway, you put aside a small chunk of that often for like a 401k or for savings or what have you. And it's sort of like sorry, it's a little bit loud on my side. And it's sort of like an opportunity for you to save money that you don't necessarily need right now, so that later, if you do need it, you have it. And I was thinking that's actually a decent product too for people who want to do that. Like if you're on the chain and you say, look, every transaction I make, let me put 10 cents to the side, and that goes to an investment company that just invests in like ETFs, right? Maybe it's just like crypto ETFs or whatever, but it's all on chain, like a regular company like that. That's actually an interesting way of just putting stuff to the side. So if what you usually do is like meme coin degen BS, right, which is fine if you're winning, but
Like some
if you lose,
in the meantime.
yeah, but if you're exactly, but in the meantime, you're still taking a small chunk of what you're doing, and you're getting some okay assets, right? And so I think that that's like another business I was thinking of yesterday that could be interesting to be built on top of the service layer.
Yeah, and I really think just the ease of having a revenue model will really change things, right? Because it's just going to be like, no, I'll click the button. It's not like it's so simple to do for users, and we will help these service companies get exposure through the hub, right? There will be a tab that has all of these, all the good ones at least, right? So we'll probably do some vetting there. But yeah, I mean, I really think this is gonna change things substantially, right? Because it's a whole, I don't know, layer level, whatever you want to call it, that other blockchains just do not have. And I think once there's real traction on this will just be a tremendous competitive advantage. And we actually very possibly will end up with better customer support than somebody like Coinbase, right? Because people pay for it. It's going to scale, hopefully, really nicely. There's going to be different tiers you can opt in. So I'm pretty excited to see where this leads. And I think this kind of goes back to our philosophy of like, hey, this is technically not very difficult to do, but I think it'll make a tremendous impact as to how usable the ecosystem actually ends up being for users, right? It's less of a, oh my God, this is the most technically gigabrain thing, because it isn't. It's fee sharing, right? But I think from just a practical standpoint, this could change crypto for the better by a lot. And I really think
I mean,
it'll
it's
be
like
just
the
a
App Store,
huge
right?
adoption. Yeah,
I mean, just like the
exactly.
example. I mean, it's just like that. I remember because I'm a geezer. I remember whenever Steve Jobs came out with the App Store, and it was like, wait, what? Why has this not been done like this? This is just so much better, you know. And then obviously that's, you know, that sent them off into the moon. And so so hopefully a similar kind of quote unquote paradigm shift comes from this, and people start to think about these layers a little bit differently, starting with Glue. Thank you,
Yeah,
Bell, for the
totally
question.
agree.
Excellent. I just love the multiple opportunities there for even mutual marketing as well, because service providers will bring their own type of marketing for us. But let's jump to the next question. Just remind everyone, we only have 2 more questions. Then we will open the floor for you to ask any question you have. Next one. How does Gluehub's centralized interface uniquely appeal to novice crypto users and traditional professionals?
Yeah, okay. So first off, I want to address the word centralized, right? So I want to make it very clear that the goal of the hub will be to aggregate all the good protocols on Glue into one front end. So the idea is not to say, hey, our protocol is the only protocol you should use. And we'll have a whole bunch of content on this kind of coming out soon here. But so the idea is not to say, hey, you're only whatever allowed to use Uniswap, right? That would totally go against the idea. But at the same time, like I was just looking at this today, like if you go on Solana's website and you look up, hey, ecosystem, like what DEX should I use? Right? There's a list of like 12 of them. And you're like, well, and there's no description. And it's like, well, which one should I use? Right. And I'm like, well, realistically, no retail person is going to be like, oh, amazing. I now have to research 12 different protocols to even figure out how to do a like not even just how to do a trade, just like there's multiple sites that I can do trades on with no description as to why one might be better than another, right? That's the type of situation we're trying to avoid. And so for trading specifically, this is not a hard problem to solve, right? This problem has in fact been solved a ton of times, right? Like 1inch does an amazing job, Paraswap, right? These type of aggregation protocols do an awesome job. And so the Glue Hub will effectively be an aggregation of aggregation protocols, right? So the idea is, hey, we will aggregate all the different DEXs into one router that users can trade against for the best execution price. The same will happen with like lending protocol deposits, right? There should be a way to say, hey, what's the best yield right now of the good, safe protocols? And it should automatically deposit to that and withdraw from that, right? So this type of abstraction of the protocols themselves into a very much router-based front end, and again, multiple routers. So, like for example, same goes for NFTs, right? If there's 8 NFT platforms or markets on Glue, then there should be one interface that aggregates them all into one front end. And when you buy it, it just buys it from the respective market. Obviously, the great thing is for developers, they will get tons of traffic from that, right? So they don't have to do as much marketing. They don't have to go do all the crazy stuff that you kind of have to do right now to get attention on Ethereum, for example. You just end up getting integrated into the hub, and you end up getting traffic if your product's really good. I think it'll certainly help the user experience for users. And I really think it'll help developers a lot too. Well, it will help developers that want to develop code and develop smart contracts. The developers who really focus on marketing, probably less so, right? They can still do that. They can still build their own brand, etc. But I really think the devs that really just want to build and don't want to get like, oh my God, I have to launch a token, I have to do marketing, I have to do user acquisition. I really think a lot of that can be done by the hub. And so that high level is really the idea. And wait, did that answer the question, Bell?
Yeah, you guys went beyond.
Oh,
Thank you.
sweet. Okay. I forgot what the question was. But yeah, I think the hub, right? I think just this idea that like it's the super app, right? The idea is like it does all the things on Glue in one place. Now, by the way, anyone could launch a competing front end, right? This is not meant to be the only front end. But the idea is that this is the starting place, right? If you're a new user, basically all the stuff you probably want to do will be there. They will be simple. They will be easy. And you can always expand from there, right? If you want to go provide whatever concentrated liquidity on the DEX, you can do that. That won't be on the hub, right? The hub really is meant as to like, hey, here's the basic functions that most retail users will want and need. And we will have them built in a way where you don't have to quote unquote learn all these other things, right? Again, like Curve is better for whatever stable coins. Uni is better for whatever brand new launch tokens, right? Balancer is better for tokens that have been around for a long time, right? Like these things, and people won't even know that 1inch would solve that problem for them because it does. Like you have to figure this out. There's this whole huge learning curve. That's the goal of abstracting all of that away through the hub.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you. Next one is, can you share some information about the roadmap and explain Glue's philosophy regarding roadmaps?
Yeah, okay. So roadmaps. So I've been building tech for, I don't know, it's been over 20 years now. Actually, it's been a good bit over 20 years. And roadmaps tend to be extremely difficult and frequently not super useful. And I'm talking purely from a development standpoint and less from a marketing standpoint. But so the tendency, and so crypto loves to just have these like 3-year roadmaps and then just never deliver on anything largely, right? Because it's impossible to deliver on a 3-year roadmap. If you've ever run an engineering team, like you can't deliver on a 3-year roadmap. It doesn't really work like that. Things change, all of that stuff. So we have an extensive backlog of ideas and of tickets that we will get to. The order in which we will get to them is going to be determined as to what do users want, what is the product needs, what also, I mean, marketing will be considered, right? So that obviously definitely flows into it as well. The roadmap isn't that predetermined. And we really don't want to say, like, if I say, look, this is what's going to happen, then I will be 99% sure that that is what in fact will happen. And I just cannot do that with roadmaps. And so I don't like doing these like long-term committed roadmap things because of that. I think anyone who does either doesn't know how to manage developers or they're just like being untruthful as to their certainty of being able to deliver on that. I don't love them. We will have a lot more high-level product things, right? I think unlike with other ecosystems, right? Like for example, whatever, let's say Avalanche, right? We have no idea what the vision for the overall ecosystem is, right? Like the foundation will be saying, hey, here's the tech we're building, but there's really no overarching product vision. I think I'm less roadmap focused. I am extremely product vision focused though, right? So the idea of like, hey, what are the features that users really, really want? Let's figure out what they are. Let's figure out how to deliver those. And maybe this is a distinction without really any huge difference, but we very much have a long-term product vision. The same deal there. We don't love releasing those things because just too many things change. And I don't love being in a situation where we're like, we said we're going to do this and then we do something different. I want everyone to know that if we say we're going to do this, then that's what's going to happen. Maybe things will come up, right? There's going to be exceptions to that. But largely speaking, if I tell you what the 3-year product vision is, it's just going to be wrong, right? Because it just doesn't work that way. So, and this is kind of the unpopular answer with the marketing folks. It also is absolutely true, right? So I think anyone who's managed dev teams will like resonate with that. And so we're really trying to figure out how to some extent, resolve that, right? I think we have a lot of like examples of the direction coming. Like and you guys will see this in the next couple of weeks here, but we really want to show people where we want to go with the ecosystem at large. And so there will be a whole bunch of like mock-ups of future features, that type of things. I just don't like really putting final dates on it just because it's just so unpredictable on that side, right? Like it could be that NFTs become huge again next month and we decide to, hey, it's probably worth from a marketing perspective to do an NFT project. Crypto is too volatile, too variable. There's too many new things that come up all the time. So that's why we don't have like a Q1, we do this, Q2, we do that, Q3, we do that. And then when again, they go out to like 3 years from now, and I'm like, how could anyone possibly know that? And
well, it just means they've never done it before, probably Snapshot. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. A lot of the teams are so young and so new that they just simply haven't done it. And so I don't really think it's bad faith all the time. I think they just don't realize that it's not a doable thing. You know, it's just not.
Yeah, and it's one of those like you could probably stick to it, but it would just be such a horrific idea to now decide our 3-year roadmap and then just blindly stick to it because we said that's what we're going to do, right? So just even from a practical perspective, even if we could do that, which we probably couldn't, we probably wouldn't want to do that because it's just a bad idea. And so I think crypto projects frequently use these future attractions as their whole marketing strategy. I don't like doing that, right? Like for me, what I'd love to do is to be able to announce features that are nearly done and then launch them and then really do most of our marketing around that, right? On the imminent. I'm sure we're going to deliver that features. Now, the problem is for the first 3 to 4 to 5 months, which is what we've seen, you don't have a lot, right? Because there's stuff to finish up, stuff to get ready. But once you get to the beginning of like the first features you start releasing, that problem kind of goes away. And because then you're going to have a feature every month or two, you're going to start rolling out new things. And so that the not having a roadmap thing is annoying in the beginning because everyone will ask, oh my God, what's the roadmap? What's going to happen? And you can start at that point to kind of give into that and just start promising things that you might or might not be able to stick to. And I think for us, we've been much more on the side of like, no, look, like I know it's annoying and I apologize for that bit, but like it will be way better in the long run. And we have a huge product vision. And I think that's the other part, right? It's a huge project. There's a zillion things that go into it. It's not a meme coin, right? Because you can pretty much determine the roadmap for a meme coin because it just doesn't really have one post launch. And so I think there's definitely a difference from that perspective as well. But like literally, I've managed tech teams for such a long time. It's impossible to predict these things. The features, like even what the product wants, what the product team wants, what the users want shifts so quickly. So this idea that there's this like fixed roadmap with delivery dates, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And so, and I don't know, I think there's like tons of devs in the space and like they get these like, oh, here's the roadmap, build this. And it's like, well, shit, there's no chance that's happening. And so that's really what we're trying to avoid, right? We want to make good decisions on a real-time basis. Our roadmap will change. And so we're not releasing one in the, we're going to just overpromise fashion. And I think it's going to be much easier going forward because you're going to see stuff getting delivered on like a regular cadence. We're not going to be chasing some roadmap. We're not going to, and all of our efforts aren't going to be kind of spoiled by the fact that they're air quotes late, right? Because if you say, hey, we're delivering this on this date, and then you deliver it a month late, everyone's still going to be upset about it being late versus being happy that it's actually there. So a lot of it actually kind of ruins your marketing efforts anyways. So I really think in the long run, it'll end up being way better. And again, I do understand that it's really annoying in the short run, especially right now, as we haven't really started that cadence yet. But it's going to get real exciting real soon here.
My question, I have two questions. One has to do with like managerial style. So I 100% agree with what you're saying, Snapshot, when it comes to like roadmaps. Sorry about the dog. Oh my God.
You're good. You're good. We can hear you.
My question is like, as a person that managed engineering teams as well, and especially when it comes to profitability, what's your viewpoint on pushing products that, like, say, the community needs, but it's not profitable, but pushing stuff that you want that is directly profitable? If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I very much like I feel you on that. So that's much more in my experience. That's a huge thing in Web 2, right? Where it's a lot more. Some products might be. This is something. Well, okay. A lot of the time, a problem with that is that users will tell you, "Oh my God, I really want this feature," and then you're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Let's take the next 6 months to build that thing." And then when you deliver it, like no one actually ends up using it, right? So I think that bit's really annoying. So a lot of times the people requesting features will in fact then not end up using them. And so I guess philosophically, it just depends on the company and the funding level, right? Can you take high risk type engineering tasks that are going to like whatever tie you up for the next 6 months, right? So I think it really depends on a whole bunch of factors. I think the nice thing in crypto is it's less, I would say, profitability driven, right? Because valuations are high, so that helps a ton. Valuation is a lot more driven by adoption and by use versus profitability. And so I think building features that users love ends up being the highest adoption thing as well, which in turn ends up being your highest valuation thing usually. And so I think it's going to be a lot easier in crypto than it is in Web 2, but I guess it's to be seen, right? And obviously it depends on the funding level too, right? I think the nice thing in crypto is like more money is available than in Web 2 from VCs, that type of stuff. And so hopefully we'll just be able to have a bigger team. And with kind of the decentralized nature of having different products, we can grow different products at the same time because they're integrated, but they're still pretty standalone in a lot of scenarios. So I'm hoping to both have more of a budget, which is I'm really excited about the valuation, obviously, and have a larger team to just be able to do a lot of stuff really quickly. But yeah, that's always the big conundrum. More so as the how reliable are the people who are requesting it? I've always found that's the probably trickiest part with product requests, is that like they're like, oh, we will for sure buy it. You do this, I will pay you so much money. And then you do that, and they're like, oh, never mind, we don't really need it anymore. So I've ran into that like a bunch of times, and it's extremely annoying every time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. I just wanted to see where you guys stand when it comes to leadership style. My next question is, I think me and Ogle have discussed about me bringing my decks over to Glue. It's been a pretty simple process so far. You guys have given like great information, but just for like, since this is an AMA, how would you think is the best way for other projects to reach out to you guys? And also, I believe in the past you talked about audits. Usually that's a major expense. I can tell you that for every new upgrade that my Dex does, or every new feature, it has to do an audit. The audits usually cost like 10 grand. And I think I've burned through about 30 grand of my own personal money. So how will Glue help with that as well?
Yeah, Snapshot. Let me talk about the first one, and I'll pop into the second one. You can come in. So, in terms of how to get in touch with us, if you want to partner, right now you just kind of go to the Telegram or go to the Twitter, send us a message, whatever. In about a week, we have a new website that should be coming out, maybe a week and a half. A new website coming out that I just saw the Figma's completely up today, and I think it's really good looking. And we have a separate section basically on there where, if you're looking to partner, there's a lot of information there, and then you can apply to, or you can sort of send us, an inquiry in that way, and then we'll hit you up, and kind of a more typical way of doing that. Or people can just message me or Telegram me if they know me, and just say hi and say what the idea is. In terms of the audits, yeah, you're right. It's extremely expensive. You should see the bill we just were given by the auditing partner, one of the auditing partners we've been talking to, and it will blow your mind. Absolutely blow your mind. It certainly blew my mind, I'll tell you that. And so, yeah, it's a prohibitively expensive part of the process for a lot of people, and not because it has to be, by the way. Like, this is not a situation that, like, audits don't have to be this expensive. I can tell you this. Why? Because I used to have an audit company in the crypto space, and I can tell you it does not have to be expensive. We did it at cost, and it was less than a fifth of what people charge on an hourly basis now. So these guys are just raking in cash, and you can't really hate them for it. But it's just, it sucks for like the actual industry itself, because if you have prohibitively expensive security audits, then you end up having products that go out without them. And then you have rugs and oh, maybe not rugs, but you have exploits, and you have issues, where people get money stolen, et cetera. That really didn't have to happen. If something was, instead of 10,000 for you to get one small thing looked at, KNG, if it was 2,000, that's probably a lot more feasible. And it probably is really what it actually needs to cost. But that's just how it is, unfortunately, right now. So one thing we're doing, as some people already know, is part of the process of Glue, or part of the setup of Glue, is we have this Glue security fund that we call it, and basically that's going to fund a lot of things that are focused on security. And one of those things is that for the bigger or the more integrated or the more strategic partners that we have on the Glue system, we are going to be sorting out the audits ourselves for them. And there's two reasons for that. One is because of that expense, like you mentioned. KNG is really prohibitive. Actually, three reasons. One, because of the expense, because it's prohibitive for most people to do it. Two is it'll just overall make our system a lot safer, obviously, which is a good thing. And third, I think that's actually an incentive for people to come and build on Glue. And so we have three different kind of points to it, I guess. And I mean, well, really a lot more than that, but three main points to it that I think should bring people in and keep the Glue system safe and make the developers happy. Because although we're not really like paying developers to come over, we're not doing that model that a lot of others do, where they say, hey, look, we'll give you $1 million because you're whatever company, so come build on Glue. We're not doing that. We're focusing on the users, as you guys know, and our position basically is if the users come, then so will the developers. And if they don't, that's okay, because we'll build it ourselves, just like we have with the DEX and just like we have with lending and borrowing and with our trading platform. In the case that doesn't work, that's going to be fine. People can still do everything. But in the case it does work, and people say, oh yeah, I'd love to go over to Glue, but gosh, I really, their system's a little bit different. I'm going to have to redo my audit. Then we in that case we'll be able to potentially assist in that process, which could be an incentive for them to come over in the first place.
Yeah, and just from a practical standpoint, I've never really loved the idea that projects audit themselves, because so many projects have a bit of a habit of getting the audit, then totally ignoring the audit and launching anyways, right? If the audit says, hey, this thing's pretty bad, well, like, you're probably never going to find out as the user, right? And then it gets exploited and then everyone loses their money. So
So,
I think the incentives there are pretty wrong. And so, yeah, we'd love to fix that as well while we're at it. Ogle, I know you
Yeah,
have a shit ton of experience with that.
so
Oh yeah, it really happens. I mean, whenever we were doing Jim's audits, my company previously, we had, we probably did, I would say 50 audits overall over the course of about a year. So it was pretty active, very busy, but maybe 15 saw the light of day, like actually went out to the public, I would say. And some of them, and we contractually couldn't tell people, the issues that were there until they then deployed and they were live. And so what would end up happening is basically company would say, hey, come and do an audit for us. I say, okay, no problem, set it all up, we sort it out, whatever. We'd do the thing, and then there would be like a really easy to solve problem a lot of times. Like, for example, there used to be this thing called the syrup exploit. So anyone who built a DEX that was taken from the pancake swap code, V1, would have an exploit in it. And it's always there. It's been there from the get-go. Pancake swap was exploited for it, but then they fixed it. But then anyone who forked their code from the prefix version, which a lot of people did, would have that exploit. So we'd say, hey, look, you have the syrup exploit, here it is, you gotta, and it would come up on the audit report. Well, they don't want to put that in public, but they also don't know how to fix it. And so they just don't release the audit report, and they just deploy the contract, and then they get exploited. So there's one called like cake swap, I think, or no, not cake. It was called ice cream swap. That one got exploited using the same exact thing. There were like 3 or 4 of them that got exploited using the same stuff. And then they end up, hating us because I would go and then publicly talk about it and say, like, I told these effing idiots there's a problem. They didn't want to tell anybody. Anyway, so we're trying to sort of solve for that problem that Snapshot brings up, which is that people don't have an incentive to kind of show their ugly parts. But actually with security, with software security, it's better to show the ugly parts and then fix them. Like, that actually is a good thing. There's this whole term back in the day that Microsoft, people used to blame Microsoft for, called security through obscurity. And it's not good, generally speaking. So.
Cool. Any other questions? Kenji, keep going.
No, Ogle's absolutely right. I think I've been at fault at that, but I can tell you, like, the mentality is that I don't want to say these projects, but like, if you fork their code and then you find an issue, you're asking, like, am I the right person? Am I the right version of this contract? But you're absolutely right. It's more or less like you're paying somebody, so they're trying to give, you're paying somebody to give you a grade. And let's be real, it doesn't really work that way. It's not like they'll give you whatever grade you want because you tell them to. So
people just want an A grade. I mean, they use it as marketing, right? They say, oh, we were audited by blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. But you know what? Probably a lot of other people were audited by blah, blah, blah too, and they just don't talk about it because it didn't come back too good.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit of just look, audits we do, we will release. Right now, of course, we'll work with the project to help them fix it, but like, they just ignore it. Yeah, that's a problem. People shouldn't be using that project. Again, that's kind of my gripe with how we currently do audits. This idea that anything bad's in it, we're just going to hide it, pretend like we didn't do the audit, and go from there. Not a huge fan of that.
I have one more question. Since stablecoins are like the lifeblood of like crypto now, since we've moved away from like pegging everything to Bitcoin, how does Glue plan on bringing that onto the chain?
Yeah, okay. So the stable is a huge part of our strategy, because I completely agree with you. I think the stable will be one of the single most important use cases for a ton of users, right? They just want to have dollars. Like, it's not that complicated. They don't want a highly volatile asset to pay things with, because they have money problems that they would like to know what it's worth. We first looked at using one of the major stables, and we kind of felt that none of them either had the decentralization we liked, the yield, or the adoption that we really felt was necessary to use them, right? So I think there was either, like, every one of them had kind of something where we're like, we don't love that. And so the other part that I think are challenging with stables, because usually stables, they have their own token, right? They don't have the stable, they have the actual asset token that like gets yield. Frequently, at least, depends a bit on the implementation. But so they often take a lot more risks than I'd like them to. And so it was between using a third-party protocol. We kind of end up deciding against that. Now, of course, people will be able to bridge them, right? We're completely open to have third-party stables. But as to kind of like the core stable, we're really wanting to push hard on adoption because we think it's going to make it really, really sticky, right? People who have it will kind of stick with the ecosystem. So we will hugely focus on that. The governance token for the stable will actually be Glue, not its own governance token, because we feel that like it's in Glue, the whole network's incentive to make sure that the stable is really safe and really secure and is not optimizing for maximal yield while taking huge potentially ecosystem blowing up type risks. And so because we're seeing it as a whole ecosystem and not as individual protocols, I think we have a lot more leeway both to incentivize adoption, right? Because we can use Glue tokens to incentivize adoptions of the stable, which I think will be really powerful. But also just in general, right? This idea of like, how do we, and by the way, for example, the DEX will have its own token. It will not be using Glue, right? Because there the incentives are different. And so we have a pretty, I'd say, pretty sophisticated design on the incentives and everything around it. So, but yeah, I'm totally with you. I think the stable will be huge.
Well, Snapshot, I do want to say something really quickly, and I don't want to call anybody out here, but in our, in the listeners here, I see Pierre down there, Pierre Yves, and he's the CEO of Legity, which is an RWA backed stable product. So, like companies like that are the ones that we probably would want to talk to and see if there's something that makes sense to, to get yield on people's stables while backing up the token itself on our chain.
Yeah, totally. I think RWAs are going to be huge. So I'm super excited about those products coming along as well as they have been, especially just the T-bill based ones, right? That was part of the not loving USDC's design, right? Because I'm like, why would we want that to accrue to some company instead of our users, right? And so totally with you on the RWAs, I think will be a huge, huge, huge part of both the stable, but also the ecosystem in general.
Oh, that's a very interesting way of. Okay, I think I see what you're getting at, because like you can get what, T-bills at what, like 3-5%. You can get like municipality bonds at like 8-9%. And if Glue has like, I'm just reading in between the lines now. If Glue has like some sort of system where you can somewhat achieve a partial of those yields while still getting Glue, it kind of does make sense just to keep those stables in Glue then.
Yeah.
So if you could imagine me putting like the emoji up right now, KNG, that had the finger in front of the mouth, that's probably the emoji that I would
okay. Okay. I'll be quiet. Okay. Well, thanks.
But yeah,
thanks, guys.
I think the
reading
combination
between the lines
of RWAs and stables, I think will be extremely, extremely powerful. So that's going to be a big focus of ours.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I guess that'll call it for the space today.
I think so.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Well, in that case, thank you so much, everyone. Great to have everyone on.
See you next week.
We appreciate it.
Thank
See you
you.
around.
Thanks.